Good afternoon and welcome. Nice to see you, nice. How is the sound? And how is the sound now? Very good. Okay, now all the business is done. If you guys don't know what I do, I have to do live control stuff at the beginning. You have to set it up. It's like I'm the filmer, the editor. I'm everything all at once. So if you don't know how this works, I shall tell you. I do these talks through YouTube. So if you're watching a recorded talk and you always wonder how you do it live, you go to my YouTube channel at 5 o'clock English time, 6 o'clock French time, every Wednesday and Sunday. But always check my website because sometimes I don't do the talks. And if you subscribe to my channel, so you go onto my channel, you have to have a YouTube channel, or a YouTube account, you subscribe and then you press the bell next to the subscribe button and then you'll get emails of when I go live. If you want to ask me questions, then you do through Skype, and my Skype address is lisacairns12. That's lisacairns12. So just send me a request and I will answer those questions. Just know if you write me a question or write me an email wanting me to answer the question during the week, it's unlikely that I'll see it, let alone reply to it. So it's better to send it during the live talk, and then it's more than likely I will see it and I will reply to it. So just so you know, I think I've got thousands of friends on Skype now. But I can't tell how many friends. I know you can see how many friends I have, but it doesn't say how many I have. So I put out the question as the title, is meditation helpful? And firstly, I didn't distinguish in the title what helpful for what. Helpful to become quieter, helpful to become more comfortable with your own time. But I presume you mean helpful to become enlightened, or presume most people think. That's what I meant. So there is nothing which can be more helpful to get you enlightened. There's nothing. Because that's already the case. It's just there's an energy that's identified with a person. And no matter what that person does, that person can't relax back into what you truly are, even though sometimes I might say it, or some teachers might say, relax back into who you are. But that person can't do it, because that person's a character moving in time. You already are who you are. That stillness is already looking through the eyes, is experiencing all of this. But in the character's world, there is this energy which contracts everything to make it feel like that person's the experiencer, and that person is the one that will get enlightened. But that person is an experience that's moving in time, that comes and goes, that's here sometimes and not other times. And that's not who you are. You're that which always stays, that which is always present, that which is. And you can't really say in the positive, in language, what you are. It's easy to say what you're not. So most people would say your consciousness, your presence, even me would say that. You're the alive presence, the I am, or the big I, or the big self. But that's impossible to describe. How could you describe what you are? Because everything that you describe is moving in time. And we're talking about something which is timeless and spaceless. It has no distance. It has no time. It's always here. Who you are is a mystery. Who you are doesn't think, doesn't comprehend in time, doesn't comprehend in words. Words appear in it. So it's the character that understands these words. It's the character that interprets these words. But what actually hears these words is who you truly are, is the big self. But the character interprets it. The character hears it and then puts it into time and understands in time. So meditating can't get you to that place, because who would get to that place? Who wakes up? I do think meditation can be really good at relaxing the person. And helping that person deconstruct what is true and what isn't true. So sitting in silence can help the mind slow down and see that you're not the thoughts, you're not the feelings, you're not the story of you, you're not time, you're not an idea. When you're just solely identified, normally the mind is super busy and always thinking about what it's got to do, what it's got to do, what it's got to do. So meditation is like the reverse. Sometimes meditation can create obsessive thinking. It also can slow down. And I think that can be super helpful. And I get the feeling that the person has to relax to an extent in order for this message to be heard, because when it's really busy, there's just total focus on the identity and what the identity has or hasn't done. I think meditation can also be good for the person to become a more balanced person, a more integrated person. I think constant activity and constant doing something isn't good for the species. I think it's something that's only evolved over the last 100 years of constant activity that's normally evolved in thought or thinking. Watching TV, working on the computer, talking on the phone, talking with friends, listening to talks. It's constantly using the mind. The reason that people don't meditate is because when you first start doing it, it is really uncomfortable. I remember when I first started meditating, I was lucky I was very young, so I think that it was easier to get into. But I felt like my mind was like you know those really bouncy balls that you can get? I felt like it was like a bouncy ball had been let off inside my head, and it was like boom, 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 maybe like a ping pong or something. And it was just like overkill thinking. And then through time, it got quieter and quieter. And then when it gets quieter, it's so easy to see that who you think yourself to be as that character moving in time isn't who you are, isn't the experiencer, cannot be the experiencer, because it's something that comes and goes, whether you like something or don't like something, your memory of something. But there's something else that's always present that isn't attached to that person. This impersonal big self. So it's okay not to do something. And what also can happen is this habit of when you're just totally reactive and totally reacting into something, you can get into a habit of going and sitting and meditating, and rather than reacting and acting something out for hours and hours and hours, you sit and you let the feelings come up and you let the feelings pass through the system, and you see that your projections of the situations aren't actually the reality, they're just simply your projections. That's not meaning to make you passive. It doesn't mean that you don't act and you don't say to someone, don't behave like this towards me. But it's just showing you that they're your projections, and if you're stuck in them for hours, it means that there is a deep attachment to those projections, and that you don't understand yourself because you're not understanding why you're getting stuck in something for hours, why you're getting caught in the loop. And normally it's because of something that you're unconscious about, like a feeling underneath the anger or the rage that feels unloved or unwanted, and you need to be able to express that to the person. Otherwise you'll keep getting stuck in the loop of being angry with them and trying to convince them of something, because underneath maybe you're feeling afraid and lonely or scared. And that's not about freedom. Like, everybody's going to have that enlightened or not. They're going to get stuck in their projections to a certain extent. But it does relax. There is a relaxing of that, so you don't get stuck in them for hours. And even when you are reacting, you see that it's absolutely not true. You know it's not true. It's simply your mind coming up with a thought and an idea that's not true, that somebody's an asshole. That isn't true. There is no definitive way of defining if someone's an asshole or not. But that doesn't mean that you don't label them as that and say, I don't want you in my life anymore, because sometimes that's appropriate. But it's just seeing that you cannot find truth in a thought. Thoughts come and go, and they're useful in the moment in order to put up good boundaries and make security and make friends and do your human stuff. But that's not reality. It's not the truth of the situation. It's the way your brain works. And your brain isn't depicting reality the way things really are. It's working on the way that it is conditioned and the way that it's wired. And there's nothing wrong with that, your condition and your way of wiring. But when you're unconscious about it and deeply identified with it, then you can get stuck in really negative loops for hours and hours, for lifetimes. And that's not necessary. So if you're feeling stressed by someone's behavior, so if, say, them leaving a mess constantly, so say if you're married and your partner's always leaving a mess and it really begins to stress you out, you acknowledge what's happening. Okay, I feel stressed out. Maybe it makes you feel out of control, and maybe it feels like too much work for you. And that's not unreasonable, having those thoughts. That might be the case. It's not that you ignore those thoughts and say, okay, the partner's right, he's totally allowed to leave mess and destruction and I always have to clean it up. That's not the case. You can say to them, you know, I want a cleaner house. But you've got to understand they might not want to do that. So you see that that's the problem, and you see the feelings that makes me feel out of control, that I can't control his behavior. It makes me feel overworked. It makes me feel unloved. And you begin to understand what your body's saying. And ideally, you'd be able to communicate that in a relationship. But a lot of the time, other people aren't into this. And so if other people aren't into this, what you actually do by oversharing how you feel, you lose power, and they'll just use that over you to get power. So only share if the other person shares as well. If the other person isn't sharing themselves, then don't share. Because you can try and see if that makes them share, but from my experience, they'll just use that as a way to convince you. They'll say, see, you feel unloved. It's nothing to do with my messiness. It's because you've got childhood traumas from feeling unloved or something. And then you think, oh, okay, so I've got to work with that, and the house is allowed to be a mess. I know all the spiritual games. I've been in this for so long. And so that's not what's being said here at all. You're allowed to want to have a clean house, and you have to find a compromise with your partner um, in order to feel like both of your needs are being met. And that's a reasonable thing to do, to sit down and work out how to meet both of your needs. If they don't want to be tidy and you want to be tidy, how do you come to a resolution of that conflict? It's not that the person that wants to be tidy is right, and it's not the one that wants to be messy is right. It's something that you have to come to a compromise with. But you're also allowed to bring something up. Spirituality isn't about taking somebody else's shite. It's okay that he's messy, I'm just going to work on my ego, and when I get over my ego, I won't want mess anymore. It's just a human game. Okay, let's look at some other questions. Hi, Nudge. Oh, sweet. Lots of love. Hi, Edith. Oh. Hi, Lisa. I learn a lot from your videos. My question regarding meditation is if you consider it like a previous step towards understanding. As I ask it, I don't think steps would be a word you'd use, but I have been meditating on and off for years and I found health benefits in it. Yeah, I think it's really good for the person. I started meditating really young and I think it was really good for me. So it was really healthy for me. It helped slow my mind down. It helped me understand my body better. It helped me become in more in contact with my sensation. But that one who's meditating, so that one that's trying to stay present, that one never wakes up. It's that movement back to what that one appears in, that presence in which that one that's putting effort into meditation appears in. Maybe meditating is part of the path. Maybe if there was no meditation, then it won't be realized. But it's seeing that it's not about you getting somewhere. You don't get enlightened. But yeah, I think meditation is a really healthy thing to do for the majority of people. And I sit a lot, but I don't meditate. I don't have like a practice where I put my attention on the breath or anything. I just sit there and then sometimes my mind thinks and then it kind of stops thinking and then it thinks, and I just enjoy that. But when I was younger, I used to put the attention on the breath and put the attention on the body. I used to step through the body. Hi Lisa, good to see you. Hope you're fine. Thanks, Thomas. Hi Monica. Hi Lisa, nice to see you. Where to start meditating? Is testing yourself the same as meditation? Is testing yourself? I think that you've put a spelling error there. Where to start meditating? You can, I'm sure you can look up meditation online. What I used to do was I used to do something called the mindfulness of breathing, where you counted your breath in. So 1, so it goes out. 2, 3, and you put your attention on that. Then when you get to 10, you start again. And then often when you first start, you end up at 100 and then you realize, oh crap, I meant to start again. So you just keep going to 10 and then back and then 10. But I gave that exercise to a friend of mine recently, and they've got very high intelligence and they could do that and simultaneously think. And then another one I used to do is just stepping through the body. And then sometimes I do like meditations with you guys, but just realize that that one that's wanting to get somewhere isn't the one that gets enlightened. So that one that's meditating isn't the one that gets enlightened. But I think it's super healthy to do, and I think it will make you more calm and relaxed. And as you're more calm and relaxed, there's a good chance that this will be seen. Hi, Bruce. Hi, Lisa. Seems like when you speak, it could be Awakeness speaking or Lisa speaking, two different entities using the same mouth. Is that right? Well, everything is the absolute, so everything comes from the absolute, but it comes through this vessel of Lisa, and Lisa contains a character. So it's freedom, which is speaking now, always freedom, which is speaking, which is thinking, but it goes through the Lisa system, and then when it goes through the Lisa system, it will have the Lisa qualities and it will use the Lisa mind. So Lisa won't suddenly be able to start talking about engineering. There's always the possibility, but that's not been in the Lisa story to learn about engineering. So, you know, being an astronaut or something like that, it's unlikely that Lisa character would speak about that, but non-duality is something that's been experienced in Lisa's life, so it fits in with the character. But you never know, maybe I'll start speaking in tongues suddenly, like and or speaking Japanese. There's always the possibility of miracles. I remember reading a scientific experiment that they made equations of how often a miracle will happen, because there's always like an alternative possibility to what's happening, but it's such a tiny percentage that alternative will happen. Oh, I forget the experiment. I'm not very good at remembering things, but it was very cool. I kind of feel things. That's the way my body works. So I remember in images, and then coming to speak about it is harder. So you can see I'm speaking very personally. So I speak through the Lisa filter, like there is through the Lisa character. So it goes through the Lisa body character. So it uses memories of Lisa, it uses stories of Lisa. But ultimately what's looking out now and what's really speaking now is the absolute, which is no one, which is impersonal, through that character. So a lot of people think that the way that I speak or other teachers speak is dismissing the character or dismissing the personal, and that's not meant to be the case. The reason why they think we're dismissing it is because I say that it's not the person that wakes up. So other teachers might say it's the person that wakes up, and to be honest with you, I don't care. It's their way of speaking, and you know, if you resonate with them, it doesn't mean I'm right or they're right, or I'm wrong or they're wrong. It's just different ways of speaking about it. And because of the way that it's seen here, I'll say that I'm right, and because of the way it's seen there, they'll say that they're right. And most people would go to war about these sorts of things, but I don't really care. But what I know some people say about the way I speak is that it doesn't deal enough with the person. And so I try to define when I'm speaking about the absolute and the relative, and I do think that there is healthier ways of being and there's unhealthy ways of being on the human level. And I think that a lot of the time what people just want is a bit more happiness in the flow of life. They don't actually want waking up, they just want a bit more happiness and a bit more relaxation. Waking up will happen when waking up happens, And I think when listening to me, there's a resonance with this message, and so it does settle something down. But in everyday life, sometimes people have very negative patterns, and I would recommend to all people to, learn psychology, study, understand yourself, understand your character, understand what the character wants. Often people don't know what they want, so they're in situations and they're being super passive aggressive and angry all the time because deep down they don't want what they have, they want something else, but they can't, they're too scared to admit that to themselves, so then they come out as angry or aggressive or hateful to other people. So it's like, learn what the character wants, understand what you're doing, understand the way you're communicating with people. And this is going to make the person more happier and more relaxed. And then more than likely, as the person relaxes more and chills out more and stops being so neurotic and addicted to its patterns and negative cycles, then this message can be heard that you are presence. If the person is really tight and suffering and contracted, then it's really caught in itself, and all it can hear and think about is itself. So in no way am I saying don't do positive things for yourself. And I think that's what sometimes teachers like me are saying, like it's God's will, and if God wants positive things for you, then God will give you positive things. But that's not the case. It is the case in one way, on the ultimate level, but on the human level, you have to put effort in. You have to put effort into changing your life. It's not just going to be suddenly like a massive like and your life is going to change. It's normally that you put effort in to stop going into the negative and to see through the bullshit. It's not like a magic wand. It is in one way, but normally it comes through, like I studied meditation, I studied psychology, I did loads of therapy, I worked on my person, I purposely sat through very difficult feelings, I learned to be by myself, I learned to travel by myself, I learned to face fears, I learned to not always give in to to fears or whatever it is. So on the human level, that can happen, and it feels like it's you doing it. So you wake up and you're like, oh, I can either sit and play computer games all day and watch TV all day, or I can set my alarm to get up. And the intention is you set your alarm to get up and do things. Whether it actually happens is down to the divine, is down to life. But it's like the person has to function as if it's working in cause and effect. So if you want to be more happier, then you're going to have to put effort into doing more positive things. And you know that being addicted to the computer and being on the computer all the time, or watching porn all the time, or I'm not saying you don't have to, you can do these things, but doing it all the time, or what other things is it? Binge eating, or eating bad food, eating lots of sugars, never exercising, being obese. None of these things are going to make you, none of these things are promoting happiness and well-being and balance in the body. Like, all these things are important, like, and sitting at home waiting for that happiness bell to go off because you listen to non-duality, it's not like that. You've got to actively make steps to making the person more balanced. And when non-duality is going to be heard, it will be heard. More than likely, if you just stay in your negativity and in your patterns, nothing's going to change and it's not going to be heard. So I can say to you, put your hand in the air, and you can put your hand in the air. You think you did it. It feels like you did it. It feels like I put my hand in the air. I put my hand up. So that's what it feels like. But as you wake up, you see actually it's just happening. The hand is being put in the air, and there's nobody that does it, but it appears through the body-mind mechanism of Lisa and the character of Lisa and the character of you. So that's the important part. There's this distinction between the absolute and the relative. Look at that, if I come closer then I get better colour. When I go further back I begin to go really orange. The orange beast. Oh, that's funny. And then I'm normal colour as I come closer. Maybe it's the furniture. Okay, maybe I put you closer to me. Then that stops. Might also be the orange of my hair. I have to go to the toilet now. Now, is that the character that says that or the absolute? So it's obviously the absolute that says everything. So the absolute produces those words and produces the thought, I need the toilet, and produces the sensation, but it goes through this character that then says, I need to go to the toilet, and there is the feeling of needing to go to the toilet, and there is the thoughts about it. You see? have to admit I'm a little bit tired today, as I've been out Boxing Day sales with Mum. I've been out. We just got back. Hi Lisa. Wasn't Buddha a little overweight as well? So he obviously didn't need a special diet or fitness training program to wake up, did he? I'm just saying I want to keep my bad habits and wake up anyways. Haha. Actually, the Buddha's fat belly is a representation of having a strong hara. So the reason they do that is because when you meditate a lot, your belly actually gets bigger. It happened to me. I used to play the trombone at school. It's an effect of what have I done to my mum's chair? It's effect of breathing deep into your stomach. That's what it's a reflection. Yeah, you never know. Anything is possible, but I doubt you're going to be seriously addicted to drugs and hearing this message. I doubt that. I doubt that you're going to be, you know, a really hateful person and hear this message. But there's also the possibility, because there is that beautiful story of the Buddha, which he speaks to a mass murderer, and the mass murderer hears it. But that's kind of the attitude that I find that non-duality brings. It often brings, you know, when you do yoga or you're doing an emotional release or different spiritualities, then people are more open to changing, where I sometimes find with people with non-duality, they seem to think that it doesn't mean change of the character, because often the character is too scared to change or too addicted to change. And so the idea of change produces loads of fear. So therefore they don't pick things which mean change. I found that I changed a lot. I found that when I got into this subject, you know, I had a lot of weird ideas, which was very much in line with society's ideas, like blame, hateful ideas, destructive ideas, not understanding myself, passive aggressive. But mostly I had a big temper. What used to happen to me, and I'm sure a lot of people can recognize this, and it's totally something that you can stop, although it's something that I still have to work on. I don't really have a temper, but there's a few times I can say in the last 7 years where I have had a bit of a shout, but it's not really lasted very long. It was nothing like it was before. But what used to happen to me was I was too passive. I wasn't, I've spoken about this many times before actually, I wasn't taught how to put up proper boundaries. So what would happen was I would be passive, like insanely passive, doing things I didn't want to do because I felt sorry for the other person, I felt too scared of the other person, lots of different reasons, but I wasn't conscious of that. So I'd keep saying yes to things I didn't want, and then eventually I would blow up. I would have an anger tantrum because it just pushed me too far, and then eventually my response would be anger or crying, hysterical crying. And that used to be my pattern. It still is my pattern to be too passive, and this is something that I work on, but I don't do it to the extent that I used to, where it eventually ends up in me crying or screaming or shouting. It has happened a few times that I got angry, and it was again from being too passive. I then found myself in a situation where people had taken too much, especially being a speaker, where like when I go to do talks, you know, if you're like a psychologist, or if not a psychologist, if you were like an artist doing a talk or anyone else doing a talk, then still afterwards people want to come and speak to you and talk to you and ask you questions. But when you're talking about this subject, people are even more intense wanting something from you because they believe that you can give them freedom. So there has been times when I've been too passive and too allowing, and I've had to step up, particularly the last couple of years. As it's got bigger, I've had to step up more and more of like, no, 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 no. And so that was my pattern. And that really changed over those years of learning about myself. And it made me just learn so many things about myself that, you know, pushed to the absolute extreme that I could do really terrible things. Like made me so much less judgmental. I felt so much more compassion for people, understanding for people. I could see how certain thoughts just produced unhappiness and stopped me doing things, like thoughts of I can't do it, I'm not good enough, make you tired and exhausted, and then you can't do it and you're not good enough. Like, so it's like how these thoughts have such strong effect on your body. And then as I began to understand all of that everything began to relax. You know, when I first got into this subject, I was so tense with so much anxiety all the time, but I wasn't even aware of that. I was just totally involved in the character. And then the character relaxed and relaxed and relaxed. And then as it became relaxed and more spacious, then this message began to be heard. I remember that when I first realized that I, who I truly was, wasn't this character looking through. There was something else looking through these eyes. There was something else hearing. And that which was looking and that which was hearing and that which was speaking wasn't separate from anything that was here. The seeing and the seen weren't separate. And that was like stunning. But then the story of me, I got involved again. And even though there was a taste of that after it's seen, you know, I'd get really involved in the person again. It'd kind of get veiled again. And then that time when that big love explosion happened here. And it was seen not only was the looking not separate from everything, that sense of I, that sense of aliveness was also everywhere and everything. The life was also this quality of love, this sense of being. And that wasn't inside my body either. The looking, the empty looking wasn't inside the body, that was everywhere and everything. And also that sense of being alive, which is love, was also everywhere and everything. It just appears as if you are this person. But actually, when it's seen who you truly are is this sense of aliveness and this empty looking, then there is a movement back to this space. And then the character comes and goes when it's needed. When you're just watching TV, there is no sense of Lisa. There's no sense of you. When you're typing on the computer, there's no sense of you. There's just typing happening. When you're doing something else, there's no sense of you. And then when you're talking to your friends, maybe there's more of a sense of you because you're talking about you and the character. Hey Deanna. Hi Richard. Hi Jason. Thanks. Hi Sue. Hi Openihan. Hi Andrea. Hi Monica. It's so hard to set firm boundaries between yourself and ones you love. The veil is sometimes too thin, like the ideas of separation is not true, and so you do not want to be dismissive of people or their ideas, even though you believe them to be really wrong. Yeah, it is really hard. Relationships can be difficult, enlightened or not enlightened, because they've got their ideas and you've got your ideas. And you're right, you can't also bulldoze people. Like, by setting boundaries, I'm also afraid sometimes of bulldozing people, because I know myself so well now that it's easy for me to understand what I want. Hey Isabel. You were talking about how you can sometimes lose power when sharing. I like things tiny and calmly raise the issue with my more messy partner. I quietly lost power and my requests were ever blamed on having a super tidy mother in childhood. Many years later, very sadly divorced. But now my place is super tidy and I love it. Yeah. I think everybody should have like a marriage counsellor that they go and see once a month to sort of like discuss these issues and how to fairly resolve them. Or, I mean, the way that I tend to favour is that you have like apartments next to each other, so you each have your individual apartment. Hi Lewis. Hi Sue. Thank you for the words it and echo of my inner feelings in sounds. Much love. Yes, separate places. Hi Laurie, great talk. I completely see that I am filling time with anything on the computer, including Netflix binging. Being completely quiet is avoided at all costs and has been since this whole idea of me being enlightened started. Yeah. You can just try. So what I do with my friend is we try, he doesn't really like meditation, we just sit in silence for half an hour every day. Pardon me. Thank you for your answer. I was referring to your earlier statement that when one doesn't change things like compulsive eating and being lazy, they won't get enlightened. It does sound arrogant to me when a spiritual teacher says things like this. I don't think that I said that. I think that I said that the person can never become enlightened, and so anything the person does or doesn't do doesn't get them to enlightenment. So I don't think I quite said it like that. But I do see that I just see so many people abuse themselves, and then they come and they're like, why aren't I enlightened? And they're binging or on stuff or addicted or gambling addict, and they're so unhappy, and they come and they're like, is my life not changing? I've been listening to you for 2 years and nothing's changed, and yet they're so unhappy. They're gambling every night, or they're addicted to something, or they're in a really abusive relationship, and then they're like hands on the hips, like, why isn't nothing changed for me? I'm like, well, if you're staying in stuff because of fear, then obviously that's just going to perpetuate fear in your life. So you're just going to feel fear a lot of the time. So of course you're going to feel suffering. And I would take that back, Stello, rather than just putting it on me and saying that it sounds arrogant of me saying this, why don't you take it back on yourself and do an investigation into yourself of what you feel when I say it? So you say it sounds arrogant of me, Lisa, but why don't you look at what you feel? So you don't like what I say. So why is it that you don't like what I say? Could it be that it's touching something that you don't want to look at? It also could be that I'm not the right teacher for you and that you need to find somebody else that speaks about it. But it could also be that you're avoiding a landmine, and so therefore you're always going to feel that landmine. If you're avoiding fear, you're always going to feel that fear because it's going to be haunting you. It's going to be chasing at your ankles. So turn around and look at it. And often I can be lazy. I sometimes call myself lazy, but actually I'm not so lazy, but I call it in comparison to other people. Like I used to have friends when they were just starting their careers, they were working like 17, 18 hours a day with no lunch break in order to stay in their job because there was so much competition. And I'm not got that personality at all. But what was I going to say? But if you are finding that you're lazy all the time and you don't want to do anything and you've got no energy, I've often found that there could be a physical illness there or some nutrients that's being missed. But I often find that lack of energy is normally because you've got unconscious thoughts telling yourself that you're not worthy and that you can't do it. They're happening. And that's making you feel exhausted. When you feel you can do it and positive about something, then it can bring more energy. But it can also be lack of nutrients, lack of certain chemicals, parents, genetics. But often I also find it's because of low self-esteem that people have lack of energy, because they feel like even if they do it, they'll fail. So therefore there's no energy to do things. So they end up just going to work, just managing to complete their workday and then laying in front of the TV all the time or not doing anything or having a depressed attitude. Great idea. Half an hour sounds like a sheer torture. I really want to do it. Maybe a New Year's resolution. Yeah, you just make it a resolution every morning to do it. And half an hour is not much. And if you do feel like that's torture, then you could try 15 minutes. That's so funny. I used to just love meditation. To me, meditation was great. Like yoga was torture. Sorry. I've had a sparkly drink. I feel that relationships are good testing ground for listening to our heart. If we are honest to ourselves, we often find that the other person also wants the same as you, but was afraid to say it, for example. If in your heart it is clear that separation should happen, it turns out not to be bad for the other. We are in a way put in the position to not be afraid to lose the other or money or anything else we prioritize over what we deeply feel to be right. But also it can be hard to be clear on your relative's truths in the moment if there are a lot of unconscious thoughts, feelings of the heart. But there also can be seen and maybe decisions delayed for when clarity is there. That's too funny because I love yoga. Oh my God, dying here. Oh yeah. So maybe yoga's enough. Laurie, that's cute that you like yoga. I used to like hot yoga. Maybe it's a personality type then, because I used to like hot yoga, but it was like super slow yoga. Now, if you were to do it correctly, you had to have like all your muscles held really tightly at all times. And I never used to do that, but I used to hold them a little bit tightly and relax them. So it was just like really soothing and relaxing. I loved it. And it was really hot and you just sit in a position for ages. But Ashtanga yoga, I'm like, don't like. Or 2 times 15 minutes, one in the morning and one in the evening. Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing you could do. Hello. I always like this one, the pencil one, except it can do funny things to the eyes. I have 2 dots in my eyes. It's funny. Oh, it's a reflection. And then it makes your teeth look a little dirty. It makes the hair look really cool. That's cool. Look at the lamp. I mean, that's amazing what you can do with technology now. That's a nice colour. Quant. That's nice as well. Normal. Okay. Okay. Okay, guys, I think that's enough for tonight. I'm not sure. I don't think I'll be doing a broadcast on New Year's Eve, so I shall see you next Wednesday. But I'll put it on my website so you can always check. Thank you so much. I love you. Happy New Year. Bye, guys.